Welcome. First of all, can you hear me? Fantastic. So, no? That bit better? All right, we're just going to sort out the mic in a second. Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me at the back? Can you hear me at the sides? Can you hear me at the front? Okay, good. All right. So, colleagues, I want to tell you a story. It starts like this. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there lived. That's the end of the story. That's the end of the story. Curiously, though, we are primed to really listen to stories. There's something about stories being something that we really receive. Our brains are primed to listen to them. And when we listen to stories, whatever their content, the evidence suggests that our brains get really stimulated. All sorts of brain activity is kind of highlighted when we listen to stories. And they're highlighted and interacted and lightened in a way that kind of doesn't work when you read a PowerPoint or maybe a book. So the stories that we share with each other are really potent. They're really powerful. They can link us to our past, but they can also anchor us very much into the present. And if we're really lucky, what they can also do is provide a bit of a glimpse to a pathway to the future. Really good stories can do that. They transfer wisdom. They share knowledge and build it. They transmit culture. And sometimes those really scary stories will transmit something of the cautionary tale. So stories are a really important part of our cohesion as a community of healthcare professionals. They bind us together. They can often tear us apart, but they are powerful and they're with us. And we need stories. We need stories to understand what it is like to walk in another person's shoes. And you know the lesson that we learned there? Empathy. And you looked at that this morning. We need stories to tell us about the things that others have experienced that are similar to ours. And you know the lesson there is that you aren't alone. We need stories to remind us of what happens when we forget the humanity of others. And the lesson is that we need to remember to be kind and compassionate. And we need stories to help us position ourselves in the here and now, and also to position ourselves in the future. So when we're thinking about pay campaigns, the stories we tell us ourselves now may well determine whether or not we are victims or victors in that. So stories are exceptionally powerful. And sometimes, maybe on more than one occasion, we might need stories to help us exercise or get rid of guilt or shame or rage or doubt. And we often might use stories too as a cautionary tale. I remember when I was growing up, the stories that were told to me: stay in your lane, be quiet, be perfect, be pretty. Well, I got that. Let me not kind of deny that. But be all of these things, but don't make a fuss. Stay in your lane, be safe. Those cautionary tales. And for everyone that looked like me that failed, those cautionary tales were flung back in my face, and they were designed to shape my story. They were designed to transform what I did from what I wanted to be to what I should be. So the lesson there then is when we're listening to those cautionary tales about what happens when you put your head above the parapet. What happens when you dare to say no? What happens when you dare to say, yeah, let's do this? What happens when you dare to say, right, I'll be the person that volunteers? What happens when we don't play by the rules? Each of us has a story. That's a fact. Every person in this room today, whatever journey brought you here, whatever place you came from, whether it's an emotional place, a physical place, a workplace, whatever, we all have stories. And in having stories, we all have highs, We all have lows. We've all got triumphs and tragedies. We've all got moments where we've been victors and victims. We've got moments where we have just about survived some things, and then we've got moments where we have learned to thrive. So in experiencing all of these, my question is why aren't we talking about this? And one of the really interesting things, I speak to people quite a lot in my job, and one of the really interesting things when I talk to people, in fact, just listening to the session that Sarah did with you, some of the things that you were talking about, some of the adversity that you overcame, the passion that you've discovered again, the belief that you had in knowing that you were right and to keep pushing even though you had no support. That many people might dismiss these as, well, they're just not a big deal really. I mean, they're not really that important. And I wonder, in listening to stories and thinking about their transformative power, if the things that happen to us, those things that kind of harm us, that weathering that happens every single day, that we tell ourselves that surviving it isn't a big deal, because that stuff makes us feel like not a big deal. It makes us feel less than what we are. And I guess then that the story here today from me to you is that that's wrong. You are a great big deal. Your stories matter. Your triumphs are important. Your failures, absolutely important too. And we need your stories. And we need them in your complete sense. And I want to know more about nursing diversity. And I want to know more about it than from what I can glean from fragments on a Facebook timeline, or from moments or a retweet on your Twitter page, or even, heaven forbid, a Prosecco-filled selfie. We need more. Because this is what I've learned, is that if you don't tell your story, if you do not say, I was here, and this is what I did, and this is what I have seen, and this is what I have survived, and here's what I have learned for right now, and this is what I'm leaving, others will. Others will. So that your story then just becomes not even a memory. It becomes that tiny fragment on a timeline. It becomes that tiny piece on a Facebook page. And we need more. We need more than that from you. So in looking at more, I actually want to share with you a video that we did and filmed earlier on, I think it was this month or last month. And it is with somebody who I think is a fabulous example of someone who's willing to take the step to tell their story. So let's look at one now. And this is shared with the fabulous Beverly Baker. Storyteller, legacy weaver, history maker. Let's run VT.
Well, my story for nursing started in 1983. So I was a 19-year-old girl, very naive, believe it or not, and a lot of my friends were working in healthcare, purely because it was, at the time, you know, giving you a good decent wage, it was a good foundation. It wasn't so much at the time, believe it or not, to do with the caring aspect. It was about having a job and being able to go out with your mates and buy nice clothes, etc. But I soon found out that it was something that I was really passionate about once I started. So I started in 1982 as an auxiliary nurse in Good Hope Hospital, which is in Sutton Coldfield in Birmingham. And I was fortunate enough to be accepted and follow my interview. And it was an absolute slog to get there because I was getting up at 5:30 in the morning. It was taking me nearly an hour and a half to 2 hours to get to work. And those days we used to start at 7:30 and finish at 4:45 with a half day. And the late shift finished at 9:30 at night. So I was running to get the last bus to get home, literally to get my head down, to get up and go back again. So I didn't think it was going to be for me. So I just thought, right, I'm just going to do the first month, get paid, and I'm never going back because my feet were killing me. It was about 40 quid a week, which was less than I was earning in this little sewing thing that I was doing as an 18-year-old. So I didn't think I was going to survive. But once I got used to the staff and I got used to the patients and I got used to, the routines, I really loved it. And it was just something that I think I was born to do. after the interview, I met a few of the nurses on the ward. I did a little kind of informal visit of the ward. And there was this little sister, and she was a little Irish lady, and she had real tenacity, you know. And when I was on duty that first morning, I was assigned to work with her. So she had like a voice group, and she wouldn't move on. Stand with me, pulled me into this little room, and there was this poor chap. He'd had major surgery. When I say he had tubes coming out of orifices I didn't know existed, I just thought, oh God, and I thought this was one of the reasons I didn't think I could do it. She said, right, this is actually telling you how to do total patient care. So a holistic approach from top to bottom, and she was so quick, she got a little whippet, and I couldn't even keep up. But eventually, you know, when she finished, I was like exhausted, and I didn't even have time to take a breath. It was down to the next patient, one after the other after the other. You know, just get stuck in straight away. You know, don't worry about it. It's no thrill. Just get on with it. And I think that's something that's kept in my heart. You know, the way she did doing it that day. She was brilliant. Even the horrible things that you don't really talk about, because there's a certain code, isn't there, in nursing, where you do things that you never reveal. There are certain things that you have dignified moments when it comes to death, when it comes to, you know, patients who are doubly incontinent, etc. Those kind of things you never ever think you would ever be able to do, but it becomes natural. People who can't understand nursing, they think, well, why would you want to wash somebody there, or why would you want to clean that up, or, you know, somebody's being sick, or, you know, why would you want to do that? How disgusting. But somebody's got to do it. And, you know, and if somebody's needing care and compassion, you can't be making faces, oh, this is disgusting in your heart. You know, it's difficult, but you do it because you know that it's the right thing to do for that person. I think one of the main drivers is, I mean, I've come from a big family. You know, my father was one of 6, my mum was one of 6, my father's brothers and sisters had like 10, 13. So as a unit, we're quite big, and I think some of that is about like caring for the siblings, caring for others, having that big multi kind of like diverse family mix where you're caring for somebody all the time. So caring came quite naturally to me. My very first patient that I lost as an auxiliary nurse, I was about 19 years old, and I befriended this elderly gentleman, and he was such a lovely chap. But I didn't know about cancers, and you know, I've gone into a job quite naive, you know, not knowing about different things that people face in life. And being 19, none of my family, I haven't lost anybody. I haven't heard the word cancer, believe it or not. I remember one day I came to work and he bought me a stopwatch. And it was the first stopwatch I ever had. Because I was an auxiliary nurse, so I didn't really need one, but we all wore them, you know. And he bought me a stopwatch and it was engraved to Beverly. And he said, thank you for all the care. And you know something, that man, it was something that I'll never ever forget, because his family embraced me like one of their children. So whenever they came to visit, it was, where's Beverly? It's Beverly Island, blah, blah, blah. And I was sitting there with him. And actually, he never left the hospital because he died. And that was the first experience I had with regard to death. And that was really profound, and it was something that stuck with me forever. I mean, I can't remember every single patient that's died, but I would never forget that patient. He was the first patient that ever had that impact on me, the first person that ever died that I knew, that I had that connection with. So it's things like that that make you want to carry on, because it's like, with him, I think he had a wonderful family, he wasn't alone, but I know that I made a difference. It's the worst job in the world when people are, you know, most people don't want to manage people, but I do feel that I've got a flair and I've got a good relationship with my teams. So managing teams, managing people, you know, those kind of things that I'm really passionate about, getting it right, motivating staff, empowering others, you know, team morale, recruitment, detaining staff, that kind of stuff I really love. I really love that side of it. Seeing how teams can develop into something unique, you know, that's really important to me. In 1987 I qualified as an enrolled nurse, and then I specialised in trauma and orthopaedics for 2 years. And then the desire to do more, that you knew that as an enrolled nurse you could only go so far. I wanted to do my registered nursing, so I went on in 91 to do my registered nursing, where I was a senior nurse, senior staff nurse on an elderly ward, elderly medicine. And I stayed there for about 5, 6 years, and then I went on to my first sister's post in 1996 at Heart Foundation 98, I got my first ward manager's job, which is like the senior sister, they call them supervisory ward sisters now at Heartlands. And that journey, kind of like, I was ready. I think in 98, I started in 83. A lot of nurses, after about 2-3 years in nursing, their assistants and managers. And I really believe that you need to have a real solid foundation behind you. I always thought I'd never be a manager because it wasn't something that really enticed me, because I always wanted to be that practical nurse, the nurse who touched your feet, in there with the teams. So it was a hard decision, but I think it's again a natural progression, because you can see, you can look at the position, but actually it's a position of influence rather than a position of tasks. It's a position of influence. I can influence this for the care. I can influence this. I'm at a position where actually I'll be listened to, I'll be heard, I'll be a force to be reckoned with. But I think that you have to be somebody that will stand up for what you believe in. And that's one of the reasons why I'm a steward in the RCN, because I'm very passionate about equality and equity and believing what's right. And if you think that there's something that's being done that's not right, you want to fight for it. We look at nursing and we look at the ranks, and there are, as you get more senior, there are less people like me, and I think that is purely that bias against the fact that, do we really want that person in charge of us? Does that person fit that criteria? Does it look like what we... It's more about what does that look like rather than what will it do? Will it be a good choice? And so I think a lot of the things that I've battled with, and a lot of the things that I do now, I try and work with networks that work, trying to give people encouragement and empowering them to know that they can do more, they can do better. If they want to, they can strive for higher things. I think I'd like to leave the legacy that the patients that we cared for won't forget us, that we won't forget them, and that we've done the best we can, and that the patients are always going to be the forefront of our mind in whatever we do, so that we don't forget the reasons why we are nurses. One of the songs that I felt would be a good song would be Unforgettable by Nat King Cole. And unforgettable, I think nurses are unforgettable. You need to be unforgettable. When somebody meets you, like that person that I first met that night, I know I was unforgettable and he was unforgettable to me. So Nat King Cole's Unforgettable, that's what you are. It's it's an iconic song, and I think that when somebody needs a nurse, we need to be unforgettable. We need to be unforgettable, and if the patient has a journey that's unforgettable to you, it will be embedded in your heart forever.
Miss Beverly, where are you? Take us, come on girlfriends, get up and take a bow. So that was somebody that I admire greatly. And I think that there are many of you in this room that could speak with the same passion, the same love, the same conviction as Miss B, as I call her. So our next steps really are to begin to think about how stories can be transformative, how they can be powerful agents for social change. On Bev's journey, she spoke about being this naive 19-year-old to being someone who looks actually, despite all the years, younger than when she kind of started. Must have been the Jerry curl. Must have been the Jerry curl shower. So it's worth just thinking about then how your stories can be transformative, how they can lead to social change, but crucially how they can change you. So from the 19-year-old to the woman that just looks a few years older, probably many decades later, who's now a leader. Bev's story is unique. Just as your story is unique. No one has ever walked in your shoes, and no one probably ever will. So don't deprive us of your story. Don't deprive us of your history. But most importantly, don't deprive yourself of the opportunity to create some really, really powerful change. And today, we aren't alone in this moment in time where we're thinking about stories and legacy. This morning I was in Liverpool and joining colleagues in the Northwest region who are doing exactly what you're doing today. They're speaking about things that often were for a long time unspeakable. We dare not say it. Let's stay in our lane. And what we have now is a movement of people across the West Midlands and across the Northwest, and it is growing. It's growing. So be part of the movement that means something. Be part of a movement actually that is speaking about the uniqueness of nursing. But crucially, be part of a movement that honours your past, anchors you to the present, and creates such a brilliant future. Thank you.